I just think that we have to strengthen communities from the bottom up, right? We can't wait for the political class to do it from the top down.
Right.
I think we got to work on this at the local level.
What do you think could be done in the United States as a whole to deal with these disenfranchised communities, like South Side Chicago, or some areas of Detroit and Baltimore that have been historically just overwhelmed by gang violence and drug dealers and just crime, and it's a part of the fabric of the community, and the people that grow up there are just immersed in this despair, and it's very difficult for them to imagine a life where they have a prosperous future, like maybe someone growing up in Orange County, California would have.
Yeah. I think this is the most important problem we're facing, right? And of course, it's a combination of initiatives that have to be implemented over time. And I know this is not completely analogous, but from the years that I spent in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, what happens, right, when there's lawlessness is communities fall back on themselves, right? And they seek protection from within their communities or their tribes. And what that does is it fragments society, and it allows extreme elements to operate within that society and to pose as patrons and protectors, right, of the beleaguered community, right? This is what happens in gangs, right? You have adolescent, mostly young males who are seeking affirmation. Where do they get affirmation? They're not getting it their family. They're not getting it their church. They're not getting it in any kind of community. So they're drawn into gangs and criminal activity. And this sort of activity then perpetuates itself because those gangs become strong. They perpetuate the violence. And I think of it as a cycle. Mainly, I've thought about this on how to really separate terrorist organizations from sources of ideological support. I think of it as a cycle of ignorance, right? Hatred and violence, right? Ignorance happens when people aren't being educated, right? Where they're not having experiences that allow them to understand the opportunities that they could have in this country, and then that ignorance is used to foment hatred, right? To portray victimhood as a new heroism, and to have everybody angry about their status as a victim, and then to lash out in ways that creates violence, right? You have to break that cycle at the ignorance part, right? At the education part, and create a sense of belonging and community that transcends these gangs, for example.
Yeah, and if we're looking at the United States and we're looking at this as if we have a multi-tiered approach to try to strengthen this union and try to strengthen the community that is the United States, dealing with these disenfranchised communities has to be a key part of that, because one of the ways that I've always said, like, if you really want to make America great, we should have less losers. Like, what's the best way to have less losers? Give people a more even shot at a starting point.
Right.
And that should be something that we concentrate on. That seems like something that China is doing in sort of a long-term strategy. They're looking at the whole of China. I mean, obviously, they're doing it in some ways in a very evil way, like what they're doing with the Uyghurs and what they're doing with dissent. But there should be, in my opinion, some sort of a concerted effort to get this national dialogue going about how we fix these communities and how we fix these aspects of our culture,
right?
Because they're not changing. They've been the same way for decade after decade with very little improvement.
And what I'd like to see, obviously, as a historian, is pay attention to what didn't work. How about that?